Watch it, Doctor.
Complete Jonny Quest, the 60s animated series lore explored. The 60s decade came up with some very special animated shows, and today we are going to take you down memory lane as we explore one of the legendary 60s cartoons, Jonny Quest. This was released in 1964 and was produced by Hanna-Barbera Productions. The show focuses on 11-year-old Jonny Quest's escapades while accompanied by his father Benton, Special Agent Race, friend Hadji, and Dog Bandit. The series was remarkable enough to get not one but 2 revivals over the years. So get ready for some amazing artwork, exotic plots, and traditional sci-fi action adventure as we explore the 26 episodes of this series for a fun recap. The mystery of the lizard men. Somewhere in the Sargasso Sea, a freighter ship gets destroyed by a red beam of light, and a nearby fishing crew reports it. However, they are also incapacitated by a group of men in green lizard-like suits and left to die as their ship blows up similarly. A Portuguese survivor under treatment tells the investigator about the lizard men attacking, and the agents decide to seek the help of Dr. Benton Quest, who lives on a private and remote island. As the US agents discuss Dr. Benton, they talk about how his wife has died, and his young son is now under the 24-hour protection and guidance of Roger T. Race Bannon. On the beach, Jonny watches the plane arriving to meet Benton. Jonny insists on practicing judo with Bannon, while Jonny's pet dog, Bandit, seems too excited to participate in the activities. They are soon called to the house where they eventually meet the agent. Benton used an AI-like machine called Eunice to find that laser had been used to blow up the ships which have disappeared in the Sargasso Sea. Although Jonny Quest is supposed to be an original concept, it resembles the Rick Brant book series published by Grosset and Dunlap from 1947 to 1967. Like Jonny, Rick is the son of scientist Hartson Brant, who lives on a private island, and they go on several adventures with ex-Marine Scotty and a Hindu boy called Chadda. In this case, Benton, Race, Jonny and Bandit sail to the Sargasso Sea and notice that it is filled with shipwrecks and sargassum seaweed. When Race, Jonny and Bandit take their hydrofoil to investigate further, Race explains that sargasso is the Portuguese word for grapes. This is not true, as Portuguese sailors named sargassum seaweed after the woolly rock rose that grows in Portugal. The lizard men observe them and report it to their chief, who asks them to keep a low profile. Jonny, Bandit and Race get on an abandoned ship when Jonny discovers a diver's suit, and Bandit notices a lizard man. Bandit gets caught, and when Jonny goes to find him, he too is attacked. At first, Jonny is able to protect himself by using martial arts, and Race also joins in. But Race falls while swinging by a rope and goes unconscious. As a result, all of them get captured. The chief then shows them the laser gun they used to destroy the ships. He further explains that all this is for an experiment to shoot down a rocket that's supposed to go to the moon. As the group gets locked up, Race helps Jonny into an air vent so that he can find and escape. Jonny knocks out a guard and finds a key, which he sends to Race through Bandit, and all of them escape the cabin. They use Bandit to distract the lizardmen and subdue them individually. As Jonny, Race and Bandit escape by their hydrofoil, another boat with the lizard men follows and shoots at them. Benton observes this and asks his crew to shoot at the other boat, but it's sailing too fast, and it now rests on Race to handle the situation. Race gets rid of the lizard men's boat with expertise. No wonder he is named Race. On the other hand, as the chief points his laser to blow up Benton's ship, Benton asks his crew to use the mirror to reflect the light onto the chief's ship, blowing it up. Jonny, Race and Bandit watch and notice the rocket for the moon taking off right on time. Later, when they are back, Benton uses Eunice to discover that laser experiments were undertaken by a foreign group responsible for the incidents. Arctic Splashdown. A missile crashes in the Arctic, startling polar bear cubs and their mother. A foreign adversary in a submarine appears to have deflected the US missile for their own benefit. A scientist shows Dr. Quest how the missile got deflected, and so he takes Jonny, Hadji, Race and Bandit to investigate. This is Hadji's first appearance in the series. However, his real introduction happens in another episode called Kolkata Adventure, which is technically the second episode produced for the series. Although Jonny and Hadji play around with Bandit on the ski, Benton shows the children the snow goose and the snow skimmer, which will help them brake and glide through the snow. 2 US fighter jets cover their ship and get into a missile dogfight, while the foreign submarine tries to torpedo the ship, but it blows up a breaking iceberg instead. The submarine commander receives instructions from higher-ups to stop Quest, and he sends a man on a raft to kill him. However, Benton ducks and saves himself from being darted. The man on the raft again tries to blow them up with an explosive, but Bandit finds it and hands it to Race, who throws it away. Unfortunately, it explodes on the man in the raft. The submarine is forced to move away and comes up in another place, while Quests get down and ride on the snow goose. They meet with another obstacle, this time in the form of a walrus who refuses to move. Jonny uses a loudspeaker to scare it away. The group finally reaches where the missile is stuck, and while Quest works with an army commander to investigate, Race offers to show Jonny how to drive the snow skimmer. After a wooden bridge to the missile is made, the commander leaves while Race and Benton go inside the missile and find signs of tampering. The enemies watch their movement and capture Benton and Race. Jonny shows Hadji a baby seal, but it's a goof-up since it becomes clear that the creatures are not seals but sea lions. As the boys play around, they get cornered by the enemies. Hadji tries to escape on the snow skimmer, but the enemy jet attacks him and forces him to stop. As the boys get captured, another US airplane comes for patrolling, but the boys are forced to wave at the pilots. When the boys are put in the same van as Benton and Race, Benton informs that he is ensured that the missile will explode within a few moments and prevent the enemies from using it. Dr. Benton Quest was initially voiced by John Stevenson, who was later replaced by Don Messick. Interestingly, Messick is also the one who voices Bandit. The enemy commander calls in Benton to take his expert help in studying the missile. First, they don't want Quest to reach the place, and now they want help. Make up your mind, evil men! Benton is also capable of handling himself as he shoves the enemies and tries to escape, but slips and falls on the wooden bridge. A killer whale tries to target him and breaks the bridge, but Benton is able to get on land. The enemies shoot at him, but soon the missile explodes, taking them down. This series has a lot of death, which doesn't really go with the idea of a kid's cartoon. Later, Race regrets being unable to study the missile, but at least the enemy couldn't use it. As Race and Benton discuss this serious affair, Jonny and Hadji Race pass them in the snow skimmer, earning some penalty points from Benton.
Oh, what's that? It's a mummy. It's walking.
The Curse of Anubis. The story in this episode starts in the mystical lands of Egypt, where a restoration is going on in the tomb of Anubis. 2 Arabian men knock out the guards and steal the statue of Anubis, unaware that it has woken up a mummy. The thieves show the statue to Dr. Kareem, who has some secret plan, and he orders the men to take the statue across the borders to the ruins of Giza. However, the men are afraid of the curse of Anubis that may befall them for desecrating his tomb, but Kareem ignores them. Kareem calls his old friend Dr. Quest and invites him to Egypt. On their way, Race shows the news of the statue being stolen to Benton, who later asks about it to Kareem, unaware that he is speaking to the thief. Kareem blatantly lies while Jonny enjoys his time riding on a camel. Race is voiced by Mike Road, but the character's look is modelled after actor Jeff Chandler. That night, Race jokes about the mummy, which upsets Kareem's servants. What's more, the servants also notice a glimpse of the mummy for a moment and get scared. The next day, Kareem takes the group to the Oasis El Kabir and tells them that he will take them to show something special the following day. The name of the oasis is probably taken from Gilf Kabir, a desert plateau in Egpit, which is near Libya and Sudan. However, the area has no oasis or pharaonic remains, contrary to what's shown here. At night, Benton shares his doubts about Kareem with Race when the boys come to their room, and all of them see a desert scorpion sneaking into the room. Race kills it with a whip when Kareem appears to bid them goodnight. The mummy also arrives at El Kabir and stalks Kareem while he remains blissfully unaware. The next day, Kareem takes Race and Benton to Giza and into the catacombs, where he finally reveals the stolen statue and his plan to frame Dr. Quest and Race as the thieves. Kareem has this superbly lame idea to unify the Arab nations by blaming the Westerners for the theft. He also releases adders to ensure Benton and Race cannot escape. But who needs a snake when you have a snake-like friend like Kareem? Back at the Oasis, Jonny and Hadji play a game of hide and seek when they overhear Kareem's men talking about capturing them. Hadji distracts the men while Jonny gets away with a motor scooter. Jonny also picks up Hadji, and they get chased by Kareem's men across the desert. Hadji is called a Hindu boy by the men, but it's another error as Hadji Singh is probably a Sikh. The boys take refuge in a building, but the men still find them. However, once again, the boys are able to blindside the men and make their escape. Eventually, they ride through a narrow wooden bridge, and Kareem's men fail to follow as they fall from the bridge. Bandit also pursues the boys and runs across the desert. Jonny and Hadji finally reach Giva and enter the catacombs while Kareem and his servants follow them. The boys find Race and Benton surrounded by adders, so Hadji uses his snake charming abilities to make the snakes go away. However, Kareem arrives and shoots at Bandit, who too has joined his family and barks at the enemies. Bandit escapes the bullets, but the statue of Anubis falls over him, covering him. As Bandit moves around underneath the statue, the servants get scared and run away, leaving Kareem, who shoots at the ceiling to threaten them. Looks like Kareem's doom is near as the mummy also appears and lifts Kareem, but the ceiling falls on both of them. The Quests escape the ruins from the hole made by the falling ceiling, and as they leave on camelback, Jonny's dream finally comes true. Pursuit of the Poho. It's a dense forest filled with wild animals where a tribal group captures Dr. Emil Hartman for a ritualistic sacrifice. On Palm Key Island, Race gives Hadji a paragliding lesson, while Jonny is subjected to studying to improve his grades. Bandit also learns a lesson, not to antagonize wild animals or get bitten. As Jonny and Benton head inside to concentrate on their studies, they receive a call from Dreen Hartman from Otaranti Station. Dreener informs Dr. Quest that the Pohos have kidnapped Emil, and Quest assumes it's probably because Pohos sacrificed their captives to either the fire or water god. The Quests take their jet and travel to Otarante, and on their way, Benton shares that Dreener's husband Emil and he are not only friends, but also the only ones to understand Poho language. Before landing in the deep forest, Quest uses the loudspeaker to speak to the native warriors in the Poho language. He explains to Jonny and Hadji that he proclaimed himself as Erio, the air god who is upset with the natives for taking a person captive. Bandit also barks into the speaker, scaring away both the natives and the wild animals. Once the group reaches Otaranti Station, Dreener informs them that Emil had been inching closer to the jungle to speak to the Pohos, but never got an answer, and once he disappeared, the drums sent a message that a stranger was captured. As the drums sound again, Dreener decodes it and says that the Pohos know that Quest is here, and Emil will be offered to Raneo, the fire god. Meanwhile, Jonny and Hadji entertain themselves by watching Bandit trying to ride an armadillo. That night, Benton plans to show his silhouette to the Pohos and scare them as their air god, but he gets captured instead. Race asks Dreener to look after the boys and leaves to rescue Quest. However, the boys sneak into the forest and meet Race's boat midway. They wait near the Poho village, and Race goes to investigate. He notices that Emil and Benton are tied to a wall as the warriors throw poisoned spears at them. Race returns to the boys and covers himself with purple berries so that the Pohos mistake him for the water god. Jonny also takes the bullhorn and sends a message to his father about Operation Big Lift and how Aquesio, the water god, is on the way. Just as the Pohos are about to put Emil and Benton into a pit, Race appears as Aquesio and frightens the Pohos. Race also assures Dr. Quest that he will be back to rescue them. If you haven't ever noticed, the series doesn't have specific opening or closing credits, as the scenes in these sequences are taken from the episodes. A significant amount of forest footage is, in fact, from this episode itself. Moving on, the chief of the Pohos has a one-track mind as he convinces his tribe that Raneo is more important. While Emil and Benton are put into the pit, Race punctures some Poho boats. Race and the boys wait till it's dark, and the Pohos are asleep. Race then again swims underwater and goes back to the village. He uses a rope to lift Emil, who returns to the boat, but as Race tries to lift Benton, the Pohos wake up and attack. Race somehow escapes being impaled and goes back to the boat. Jonny also starts the engine, and Race ties the rope to the propeller engine so that it pulls Benton out of the pit. As Benton gets dragged through the village, he overthrows several warriors, and finally, with Race's help, he makes it back to the boat. The Poho chief and his company follow them on a boat, but thanks to Race, the boat sinks soon. However, we do respect the chief's dedication in asking his people to row the boat until the last moment. Despite all the trouble Race went through, the trip ends badly for him as Dr. Hartman informs him that his purple colour won't wash off easily and wear off after 3 weeks. As Race becomes furious, the boys tease him. Do you think Race is the ultimate hero of the Jonny Quest series? Well, we sure do. Just wait until you see Race Bannon race with a military aircraft in the Andes or when he takes down a sumo wrestler. As for Jonny, he too may have some tricks up his sleeves as he gets past gold smugglers, makes friends with apes, or even fights yetis.
If anyone has a suggestion, now's the time to come up with it.
Riddle of the Gold. The newest atrocity occurs in India, where the Maharaja of Jahilipur takes Abdul Qasim to show him a man-made block of gold that he made with Professor Gunderson's help. As the Maharaja enters his palace, his pet leopard, DJ, welcomes them. Qasim video calls his boss, Dr. Zinn, and shows him the block of gold, and it becomes apparent that Professor Gunderson is forced to work for them after his fatal accident. As Dr. Zinn commands Qasim to proceed with Phase 2 of their operations, Qasim murders the Maharaja and steals the gold. This is the first appearance of Dr. Zinn, the major and the recurring villain of the series. Back in the US, Agent Phil Corvin shows Dr. Quest a block of man-made gold and asks him to test it in the Palm Key labs. In Palm Key, Hadji shows a magic rope trick to Jonny, who fails to recreate it but gets distracted when Corvin and Benton arrive. Benton shows Race and Corvin how a specially formulated acid disintegrates the block, indicating it's xanium and not real gold. The men discuss that the Maharaja of Jahilipur is mixed up in guns and smuggling and might be involved in the act of making fake gold. They also assume that Abdul Qasim might be working alongside them. Quest informs that the only one aware of such transmutation process other than himself is Gunderson, but he has died in a plane accident in the same place. The men realise the events might be connected and decide to visit India. It is also the first and only time the US government agency, Intelligence One, is mentioned for which Race Bannon works. Corvin ensures Quest can go and investigate under the pretext of photography, although Quest clarifies he met the Maharaja 10 years ago. In the airport, Bandit refuses to be locked up in the cage and escapes, so Jonny and Hadji are called to the information desk. Hadji uses a magic trick to sneak Bandit into his satchel. During the flight, Benton also shares his doubts about Dr. Zinn being involved in the scheme with the Maharaja. In India, the group gets constantly attacked, first by a truck and then by a man called Ali, who disconnects their train compartment. Fortunately enough, the quests survive thanks to Race's quick thinking. Meanwhile, Dr. Zinn reproaches Qasim for failing to obliterate Benton Quest and his group, but also applauds his ability to impersonate the Maharaja. Qasim now poses as the Maharaja, but anybody who has seen the Maharaja before would notice the striking difference in their appearance. Nevertheless, Benton Quest and his group meet with Qasim as the Maharaja and dine with him. Qasim instructs his man Ali to release Karab, the tiger, and kill Quest and his party. Some men instigate Karab to ensure it kills Dr. Quest and his mates. However, when the tiger is released, it attacks the captivators and kills Ali. Meanwhile, Jonny and Hadji find a conveyor belt and ride it until they reach Professor Gunderson's hidden underground lab. The boys get captured by Qasim, who comments that Dr. Quest and Race will soon be here. After the Americans are tied and confined to a room, Qasim draws a line with gunpowder and lights it up so that it ultimately blows up. However, Bandit comes to the rescue as he puts out the flame with his butt. The heroes and Professor Gunderson escape while Dr. Zinn gets the news, as the dead king's leopard attacks and kills Qasim, while Dr. Zinn promises they will meet again.
Looks like he's finished.
I got news for you. I'm just starting.
Treasure of the Temple. The story begins somewhere closer this time as Jonny and Hadji travel with Benton and Race across a dense South American rainforest in search of a lost Mayan city. They are guided by a local person named Montoya, while native men carry their things. Soon, the group faces obstacles in the form of deadly traps and attacks that scare away the porters. Montoya suggests they go back, but Quest refuses as he is sent to examine the ruins by the government itself. It also appears Montoya planned these attacks and hired natives for this purpose. A toucan joins the group in their expedition, and when they finally arrive at the lost city of Malatan Bandit, the children also come across an anteater. One thing the show is definitely good at is introducing the viewers to various less-known and exotic animals. We have already encountered whales, walruses, armadillos, camels, and now anteaters. Benton further notices a reflection from one of the ruins and suggests Race to watch. It turns out to be a British treasure hunter called Perkins, who is the one to employ Montoya and others to drive the quests away. As one of the natives refuses to work for Perkins, he orders the others to make him work for the vultures. Meanwhile, Race and Benton examine pottery found underneath the earth near the ruins. Bandit encounters a deadly Gila monster, and the toucan bird saves Bandit. This doggo has a taste for danger, just like his humans. The boys also notice the vultures and find the native strangled beneath a tree and left to die. The boys call in Race and Benton, who try to communicate with the natives but fail to understand his language. They help him by cutting the restraints. At night, the group camps in the ruins, but Race and Benton are still worried, as they should be, since Perkins and his men set fire to the tents at night. Bandit senses the fire and wakes up the boys, and Race wonders why the villains just didn't kill them. To which Benton replies that if they go missing, the capital will send police to look for them, which would not be good for the perpetrators. The following day, Hadji and Jonny play around, and Jonny accidentally discovers a chamber with jewels and other treasures. You would be interested to know that Tim Matheson, who voiced Jonny, and Danny Bravo, who voiced Hadji, are almost age-appropriate actors chosen for the series as they were only 16 during the premiere. Montoya and Perkins corners them in the chamber, and although Race and Benton try to resist, they are still captured by the thugs. Perkins appears in their cell for introductions and thanks his prisoners for helping him find the $1 million worth of treasure. With no way out of the cell, the boys get discouraged, but the native they rescued enters from a hidden door and escorts the gang into an underground river. The native shows them a boat, and the quests take it. However, the native gets captured by Montoya and others. This time, the native thwarts them and jumps into the river, but crocodiles follow him. Jonny falls into the river while trying to fend off the crocodile. Although the group rescues the native, Race jumps into the water to save Jonny and fights with the crocodile. He also ensures that the boats of the enemies following them are stalled. Race uses different techniques to throw Perkins, Montoya and their gang off the boat, but they recover every time. Race also gets trapped in a giant spider web, and as a huge spider inches toward him, the native shows Benton a gun that he has kept in the boat. Benton shoots the spider dead and takes Race back on board. Their boat finally sails into a large underground lake with stalactites above. The enemies also follow, but Race shoots at the stalactites, which punctures the enemy's boat, and all of them get eaten by the crocodiles. The heroes finally make it back to the forest, and the native community comes to see them off, teaching us once again that love and kindness transcends all barriers. Kolkata Adventure. It's time for some flashbacks on how sweet little Hadji Singh became a part of the unconventional Quest family. The episode begins with the family watching video footage of sonic waves causing an avalanche in the mountains, and as snow enters a secret lair, it explodes. Benton tells everyone that he got the footage from Pasha Peddler, and although Race calls Pasha a joker, Jonny claims that Pasha is the reason they got Hadji. As the flashback starts, we are taken back to India at Calcutta University, where Benton is giving a lecture conjecture about sonic waves being able to destroy New York buildings. Outside the gates, Hadji can be seen working as a snake charmer for pennies, and Bandit gets scared away by his mongoose. When someone throws a dagger at Benton, Hadji saves him, but watching Hadji holding the dagger, Jonny assumes him to be the culprit. Jonny jumps on Hadji, but he is able to throw Jonny with his judo abilities. They quickly become friends, and Quest takes Hadji for lunch. Hadji explains that he is an orphan and has learned English and judo from a Marine. Benton explains that the attack was probably to stop him from investigating a mysterious ailment affecting sheep herders in the mountains. The symptoms of the ailment indicate the use of nerve gas, and for further investigation, they must reach Borat. Hadji volunteers to accompany the group as he knows the mountains well. During lunch, Hadji shows Jonny the man who targeted Benton, and while Jonny tries to spy on them, the men realize someone is eavesdropping. Hadji uses his magic to distract the men as Jonny hides. As we have already mentioned, this was the second episode produced, but as the air date was pushed back and Hadji was already a familiar character, the flashback trope was added to acknowledge his origin. The group, now accompanied by Hadji, travels to Borat, but the evil men spy on them and a jet soon attacks them. Race's driving maneuver saves them and the jet crashes. After traveling for a while, Race again notices wood shavings on a wooden bridge, and as he tests the bridge with a rock, the bridge breaks. Surprisingly, Hadji has connections, and his friend Pasha Peddler arrives on a helicopter and gives the group a lift. The only catch is that he puts a price on everything. Now we realize why Race commented that Pasha must have sent the video footage on COD. Pasha provides them with parkas and skis, and when Jonny notices a secret door within the mountains, Benton asks Pasha to land. As Benton and Race go to investigate, the boys stay with Pasha. However, the snow beneath Benton's foot gives away, and he falls directly in front of the door of a secret lab. This particular episode is well adapted into Comico's Jonny Quest Classics issue number 2, while in the real adventures of Jonny Quest, Hadji and Pasha's relationship is revised as Pasha is more of a guardian and mentor to Hadji, who is shown as a prince. But let's not go too deep into that, as it might get confusing. Returning to our tale, guards from the lab take Benton inside as Race watches from afar. Pasha arrives to help Race and takes him to the lab door. Pasha distracts a guard as Race sneaks in. Inside, the evil man questions Benton about his spying, but Race arrives and ties the man to a chair. As Race and Benton try to escape, the villain sounds the alarm. Both the groups shoot at each other, and Race manages to drop chemicals on the guards and even throw some of them into the vat. As they come out of the lair, Benton and Race notice Pasha has left skis for them with a price attached. They reach the helicopter, but it won't take off due to mechanical issues, so Benton asks Race to use the sonic amplifier. The sonic amplifier causes the avalanche we saw in the video footage at the start of the episode. However, Jonny gets stuck in the snow in its path, and Race has to rescue him. Later, as the group leaves for the US, it is revealed that Pasha has arranged for Hadji to be adopted, but he forgets to get the payments.
More power.
The Robot Spy. The events of this episode occur much closer to home as a UFO travels over the seas and gets detected by a ship on its radar. They inform the control room and 2 fighter jets from the nearby Quest laboratory go for reconnaissance. However, the UFO ducks underwater and hides from the jets that have been ordered to return. These jets are inspired by the supersonic XB-70 Valkyrie, which debuted in September 1964. The UFO lands in a desert near the lab, and the security guard reports it to Dr. Benton Quest. Benton has been working on the new machine, and after locking it inside a chamber, Benton and Race go ahead to investigate the aura of light from where the UFO parked. The door of the UFO opens, and a large spider-like machine emerges from it and scans the area before going back. According to Star Trek fans, the opening sequence of this episode is quite similar to the episode Tomorrow is Yesterday from the first season of Star Trek, 1966. When Benton and Race reach the UFO, the light is already gone, and as Benton waits, Race goes back to bring a tractor. Jonny has been observing Hadji levitating a sleepy bandit for fun when he notices Race and the boys insist on joining him. Bandit is, of course, in tow. While Race and Benton examine the spaceship, it opens up again, and the black ball emerges, opening its eyes. It appears that Dr. Zinn is currently staying in a castle and remotely spying on Quest with the help of the eye. As Benton and Race decide to take it back to the lab, Dr. Zinn seems satisfied since this is all he intended for. Benton informs Race that he will test the Parapower Ray Cannon the next day and then examine the eye. In the storage, the eye opens once again while its legs and antennae emerge. The robot spy knocks out a security guard and exits the storage. It then spies on the boys who are busy studying, and Bandit notices it. However, when Jonny goes to check, the robot quickly moves away. The concept of spider-like robots being transported by a spacecraft was also used in The Incredibles animated movie in 2004 by Pixar. The spy robot eavesdrops on Benton and Race's conversation. Benton explains that the Parapower Ray Cannon can drain the power and energy from any item, rendering them useless or disabling even an army. As the men head back to their sleeping quarters, Benton wants to check on the eye, and he notices the door open and the guard unconscious. The guard tells them that the robot paralyzed him, and they also notice lights on in Benton's lab. Dr. Zinn, of course, wants to steal the technology of the Parapower Ray Cannon, so he uses the robot to knock out security and study the cannon using the robot's antennas. As Benton, Race and the guard enter the lab, Dr. Zinn finally speaks to them and divulges his plan. The robot tries to escape, and the military attempts to stop it with the help of guns, cannons, and even flamethrowers. But nothing works except waking the boys. Although this show is named after Jonny, so far, the boy has little to do with solving matters and is more of an assistant to Dr. Quest or Race. Still, you might be pleased to know that this episode ranked number 2 as a fan favourite in a poll at classicjohnnyquest.com. The boys discover what happened while Benton and Race head back to the lab to retrieve the Parapower Ray Cannon. Benton employs Race, Jonny and Hadji in different tasks and positions to fire the cannon, eventually taking down the spaceship and the eye. The problem is averted, but Dr. Quest is upset that his cannon still needs improvement. Bandit also salvages the eye, but Dr. Zinn sends a warning message about a future confrontation before it blasts away.
Pleasant dreams, Mr. Korchek.
Double danger. Dr. Benton Quest's latest challenge is to improve the mental endurance capability of astronauts confined to a metal cage with nothing before them as they travel across space. As Benton discusses the issue with a scientist, he decides to leave for Thailand to do more research into the subject, while his colleague asks him to keep the mission secret. At Palm Key, Jonny and Hadji wonder what Benton is working on, and even Race is unaware of it. Benton soon tells them about leaving for Thailand, and they take the jet. The jet lands in a forest in Thailand, and Bandit quickly proves his worth as man's best friend as he chases after a monkey. Kogo, the monkey, teases Bandit and sneaks into the cottage, where Benton explains to Race that he has found a vine that can be used to create a tranquilizer pill that can keep a space crew alert for 20 years and not give in to solitude or other mental health issues. However, there is a risk of the pill being abused, so the formula must be guarded. Rightly so. As it appears, Dr. Zinn has created a body double for Race and trains him in Race's manner and ways so that he can replace, and the double Korchek can steal the formula from Quest. Kogo appears much brighter and more useful than Bandit, and it would have been a nice change. What do you think? The next day, Race takes the boys to see an old Buddha statue, but their driver races through, almost putting their lives in danger. At one point, the driver claims they can only travel on foot, and Race orders the boys to stay as he goes with the local driver to take pictures of the hidden Buddha statue. However, the local driver is in cahoots with Korchek, who kidnaps Race with the help of Dr. Zinn's servant Tabak. Korchek takes Race's camera and returns to the boys. However, when the boys can't find Kogo, Korchek assumes their dog to be Kogo, but quickly recovers when Jonny finds Kogo. This is enough for Hadji to suspect Korchek. At night, a cobra appears, and Korchek shoots at the snake gleefully. While the arrival of a cobra makes Benton worry, Jonny and Hadji notice the changes in Race and investigate his camera rolls. Before they can fully develop the pictures, Korchek arrives, and the boys lie to him. Korchek also orders the driver to make sure the boys are in an accident, which turns out to be a leopard trying to attack the boys. but Jade shoots at it and saves them. The undeveloped film shows the picture of Korchek and Tabak, which further raises the boys' suspicions. The Jonny Quest comics, published by Comico in the 1980s, provided some history about Race Bannon, Dr. Zinn's backstory, and even Jezebel Jade's origin story. Jade is an old flame of Race Bannon, and she opts to check him out on her own. Korchek tries to look for something when Benton arrives to work on his formula and asks him to leave. Jade meets with Korchek outside the cottage, and after their conversation, Korchek kisses her, which helps Jade confirm it's not Race. She takes the boys to find the Buddha statue, but they get captured by Tabak and are tied alongside the real Race. Tabak informs them that Korchek will have taken the formula from Dr. Quest by now. However, even after threatening Benton with a gun, Korchek hasn't succeeded, as Benton claims the formula is stored in his brain. Beneath the statue, Hadji shows Tabak magic tricks and uses the opportunity to empty his gun of bullets. They thwart the giant man and escape from the place in a helicopter brought by Jade's men, just as the statue blows up due to the explosives set by Tabak. The sound of the explosion terrifies the elephants, who head towards the cottage, and Hadji rides one of them, calling them his brothers. The elephants help rescue Benton from Korchek, who gets punched by Race. Jade leaves after kissing Race, while Kogo takes away Korchek's wig and also goes with his new girlfriend Kiki the monkey. Although this story ends well, it certainly is not the end of Dr. Zinn. Shadow of the Condor. It is one of the highest rated episodes, primarily known for its visuals and artwork. The story begins with a man trying to shoot at a vulture in the Andes. At the same time, the quest's plane malfunctions, and Race has to make an emergency landing on the very same mountains. Race's brilliant flying impresses Baron Heinrich von Fruelich, who goes to greet his guests along with his servant Julio. While landing, the guests observe a hangar with planes near the Baron's castle. The Baron invites the group to his abode, Marienburg, and while they ride in his car, the group is also introduced to the Baron's dog, Willy. Bandit doesn't take the Baron well and aggressively barks at him. The Baron seems pleased to meet Dr. Quest, who is the inventor of the new air filter that the Chilean government is installing in the silver mines. It also appears the Baron had a flying squadron and maintained the airplanes to respect his old memories. The boys and Bandit are amazed to see the statue of the giant Condor, a vulture that the Baron explains resides in the region and feeds on small living animals as well as dead bodies. So far, nothing smells of trouble, but the Baron seems spooky, and the boys seem to agree. It is the designer and creator Doug Wildey's favourite episode, as it is the only one where he could get the desired high-quality artwork, strong layouts, and a more realistic story. At night, Bandit and Jonny shiver at the thought of getting snatched by a condor, whereas Benton and Race also discuss their host, who is a known ruthless squadron leader. The faithful old servant Julio, whom the Baron introduced as Mute, eavesdrops through the doors while the Baron tinkers with the quest's plane, ensuring they cannot fly back. The next morning, Bandit follows Willy and gets captured by a condor, but as Bandit struggles, the vulture lets him fall into a fountain, and the boys rescue him. Race and Benton also discover that someone has damaged their plane, and when Race volunteers to find some equipment, the Baron asks him to take his Spad airplane. As Race dresses up to fly, Julio comes to them and warns Benton and Race about the Baron. However, the Baron notices Julio speaking and later tortures him in a basement. Bandit and the boys notice this, and when the Baron leaves, they go to help Julio. The old man reveals that the Baron wants to kill Race in an aerial dogfight and asks the boys to take Willy out of the cupboard. Julio explains that Baron will ride the other plane, but as Willy is the Baron's good luck charm, Julio had purposely hidden Willy. While Julio and the boys race to stop them, the Baron insists on accompanying Race on the other plane. The two planes take off, and when Julio arrives, he informs Benton that the guns on the Baron's plane are loaded. One of the animators of this episode is a World War I airplane buff, which is apparent from the beautifully drawn Fokker D7 and Spad aircraft. The magnificent animation in this part is truly extraordinary. Race shows his insane skills and expertise one more time as he avoids getting shot at or crashing with his plane, and even damages the Baron's plane. However, ultimately, the Baron's shooting angers a giant condor, who attacks and takes down the Baron's plane, resulting in the Baron's death. As the quests finally get ready, Benton asks Julio once more to join, but he declines as the Andes is his and Willie's home. As we finish another great tale, the quests also make it home.
You tell me, huh, Johnny?
Nothing doing. And I thought you were a nice guy.
Skull and double crossbones. Right after some aerial adventures, it's time to dive underwater. Dr. Benton Quest takes a mini-sub to examine how oceanic creatures adjust to the tremendous pressure, which can help in deep-sea diving research. Jose, the cook and attendant on the ship, seems very interested in everything, but Bandit doesn't take him well, which we know the others must take into heed. As Jose leaves to cook, the boys and Race help Bandit learn to use the aqualung and swim underwater. Bandit almost gets consumed by the big fish, but he is pulled out straight from its mouth, while Benton also comes across a gigantic 3,000-pound fish and examines its heartbeat while coordinating with Race. While returning, Benton gets followed by a shark, but it quickly loses him. He further notices Jonny, Hadji and Bandit swimming him by. Bandit manages to get a ride on a porpoise while the boys find giant sea turtles to ride to, and together they reach a nearby island. When Jose calls Race for lunch, he signals Benton, who takes Hadji and Bandit on his mini-sub, while Jonny prefers to swim back. On his way, Jonny finds a gold coin near an underwater ship frame that he shows to his father, who recognizes it as a 17th century Spanish doubloon. The information reveals Jose's intention as he secretly reports it to a pirate chief who soon arrives at Quest's ship and captures everyone. The Quests are also shocked to see that Jose is a part of the pirates. The episode's title makes sense here, as the skull and the double crossbones symbolize the Jolly Roger flag, flown by pirate ships in the Caribbean before the 19th century. The pirates were looking for the treasure and forced Jonny to find it for them by threatening to kill his father. While Jonny dives underwater, a police boat arrives to check up on the Quests, and Superintendent Owens invites them for dinner, but Benton and Race lie and refuse. After the police leave, Jonny returns with a treasure chest filled with gold coins. But as he says there's more treasure left, the chief and his gang decide to wait the night. While confined to a cabin, the group decides to get help, and Hadji volunteers to swim to the shore and get the police. However, as Hadji waits to spy on the chief and Jose, he gets caught by a guard and thrown back into the cabin. The guard takes Bandit and throws him into the ocean, and Jonny throws his gear so Bandit can swim. The brave dog gets assistance from his dolphin friend and swims to the police boat. He urges them to go check up on the Quest ship. Although Bandit is designed after a small bulldog, its size, structure, behaviour and sounds resemble that of a Pekingese, which looks like it received a summer cut, shaved look. As a beam of light falls on one of the pirates, he foolishly shoots at the police, making them aware something is wrong. The pirates take the treasures and leave on their boat, but the police boat chases after them. After a little sea fight, one of the police bullets hits the tanker of the enemies, and it blows up, returning the treasures to the sea. Later, Benton and Race inform the superintendent that Jose was purposefully planted on the ship, and as they thank the police, the superintendent points out that Bandit deserves the actual credit. The following day, the boys again go for a swim, and Benton asks them not to bring up anything they find. Wise advice considering the trouble brought upon by a single coin. Once again, Bandit joins them, and without his gear, he gets aided by his new friend.
And which doctor's asking for it? Fire what? Bullseye!
The Dreadful Doll. The Aqua expedition continues as Dr. Quest again goes underwater to record the voices of the marine animals. A bottlenose dolphin makes a squeaky noise, while a fish makes a kissing sound. Jonny and Hadji get an idea and also scuba dive and make weird noises to surprise Benton, which is his cue to go back to the deck. The boys swim further and notice a submarine dragging boxes deep underwater. They return and report it to the adults, who find it hard to believe. The submarine was designed after Seaview, the submarine from the movie Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and a TV series. A man called Alvaro, who introduces himself as Philippe Law's foreman, arrives in his boat and asks for Dr. Quest's help in curing Mr. Law's daughter Denise, who is affected by voodoo. Benton travels to Tanaggio Island, where Philippe Law tells Benton that a man named Corbet had first sent a sugar doll looking like Denise as a warning, after which she became catatonic and sick. Philip also adds that Corbet has obtained voodoo powers overnight and is now feared as a witch doctor. Moreover, all the planters have left except for the faithful Alvaro. Meanwhile, Corby eavesdrops on the conversation and darts Alvaro, rendering him motionless. When Benton and Felipe come out of the room, they find Alvaro in a similar catatonic condition with a sugar doll beside him. They hear the sounds of the drums that make the natives go to the jungle. Benton realizes that Denise and Alvaro are drugged and takes the dart as well as Felipe's car so that he can go back and make a cure. Benton returns to their ship and informs the others about what happened. That night, Corby sneaks into the ship, but Benton wakes up. Corby escapes before Race, or Benton catches him, but they notice Benton's sugar doll in his bed. When the boys wake up the next morning, Benton has already left with the antidote and Race scuba dives to investigate. In the village, Alvaro and Denise recover with the help of the antidote, and Benton takes Alvaro to meet Corby. On the other hand, Race also finds an underwater tunnel and a hidden base with the same submarine. It seems something illegal is happening in the place, and Race gets captured by a goon named Harden. Back in the village, Corby is adamant about his voodoo powers being real, but Benton and Alvaro threaten him to reveal what's behind everything. After they leave, Corby calls Harden, who assures Corby that he will take care of Quest and Race. However, do not worry, as the boys have also dived underwater and will soon find something worthwhile. But boy, are we glad to hear less barking from Bandit. Believe it or not, Doug Wildey disliked Bandit and Dr. Zinn, as they took away the show's credibility and were cliched. Race realizes that the drums cover the sound of the jackhammers, and Harden explains that he runs an underground operation to build a secret sub and arm space for someone anonymous. As Harden leaves with a harpoon, the boys hide from him and find the base. Harden arrives on Quest's ship and waits. As Benton and Alvaro arrive, Harden forces them to wear scuba diving gear. Back at the arm space, the boys notice Corby guarding the cabin where Race is locked. They distract Corby and release Race, who also knocks out Corby before he can shoot at Hadji. The three of them take the sub and also bring up a tied Corby along with them. After leaving the tunnel, Race torpedoes the tunnel, which causes a shockwave and probably blasts the arm's space. This also allows Alvaro to overthrow Harden. Later, Benton informs Felipe and Alvaro that the government will now decide about Harden and Corby, but at least the planters can return. Denise kisses the boys, but they are too much of a coward and refuse to kiss her back. But as Benton points out, 10 years more, and we can see that ship sail. A small matter of Pygmies. We have now covered half of the series, but we are back to a dense jungle where a group of Pygmy tribe men has bound one of their own to a pole as an offering to the Black Panther. Race and the boys fly in an airplane nearby, and Race tells the boys that the jungle is inhabited by hostile Indians who worship the airplane and have never seen a white man. They soon encounter trouble as the engine stops, and Race has to make a crash landing. Although everyone on board makes it out safe, they soon hear the Pygmy man screaming, and Race shoots down the panther just before it attacks the man. The boys help the man escape, but letting him go angers the tribe. The Pygmies capture the group and take them prisoner. Jonny notices that the Pygmy are worshipping a wooden airplane model, and their headman chants something threateningly. Race, Bandit, and the boys do not take the small men too seriously, and who can blame them? The Pygmy language and appearances are just too funny. However, elsewhere, Benton Quest requests a search party to find his family. Back in the village, the Pygmies try to tie Race, Jonny and Hadji to poles when they hear an airplane pass by and start worshipping. Upon Race's instruction, Hadji levitates the headman, but it takes quite a lot of his concentration to Sim Celebim the heck out of the chief. Hadji's concentration breaks, and the headman falls face down when Jonny trips as he tries to get away with the Pygmies' spears. The three of them get tied, and poor little Bandit too, but as the Pygmies sleep, Bandit starts growling. Race and the boys notice a moving basket, which goes past the sleeping Pygmies and even slides the headman's spear into the fire. It appears the Pygmy they saved in the morning is underneath, and he cuts the prisoners loose. However, the fire in the spear burns the headman's foot, and he wakes up. Jonny and his gang leave on a raft with the help of the Pygmy, and Race finds a hilltop where they can hide for the time being. However, Pygmies are excellent trackers and soon find them. The Pygmies attack Race and the boys with their arrows, but Race slides down a rock taking out a few of the Pygmies like bowling pins. This strangely funny episode is undoubtedly entertaining, but you will be amazed to know that initially, this show was supposed to be a cartoon version of a classic radio serial called Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy. The concept was, however, abandoned as, apparently, Hanna-Barbera had problems getting the rights. And secondly, veteran comic book artist Doug Wildey was taken on board, who suggested the original concept of Jonny Quest. However, as we have told you before, it's not too original after all. Now, as for the Pygmies, they are not the ones to back down, and as Race and the boys continue to roll down logs and boulders, the Pygmies have also learned to duck. Two Pygmies attack them from an adjacent hill, and Race catapults a rock to throw them off. He does the same when the headman climbs a tree opposite them and shoots. The Pygmies still climb and continue to pose a serious threat until they start running away, hearing the noise of helicopters. Race uses the ruby on Hadji's turban to signal the helicopters, and Benton notices it. The helicopters chase away the Pygmies as they either fall off trees or dive underwater. While leaving for home, Race shows Benton a letter that he has been bringing to Benton urgently. But brace yourselves, for it's a letter inviting Dr. Quest to a debate about whether Pygmies are friendly, and we know the answer. Dragons of Ashida. At the beginning of this episode, we see an Asian native running across a jungle. He is visibly distraught and terrified as he gets followed by a big man who resembles a sumo wrestler and his two Komodo dragon-like lizards. The native manages to escape from them and jumps off a cliff. Dr. Ashida, the typical villain of this story, watches and gets angry at Sumi for letting the native go. The escapee clings to a floating log and signals for help, which is noticed by Bandit, who calls Jonny for help. As the man is taken on board the Quest's ship, he explains that the dragons of Ashida are following him. Leaving the man on the ship, the Quest team visits Benton's longtime acquaintance, Dr. Ashida, who has been spanking Sumi. Ashida welcomes his guests and shows them his genetic research on the near-extinct Tabora lizard and how it has led to the animals becoming larger and more cannibalistic, and that they need to be taken care of by a man like Sumi. Although the majestic and deadly animals impress Jonny and Hadji, Bandit is not entertained and continues to growl at them. The first scene of the native running has been a part of Hanna-Barbera's Jack Armstrong concept that tanked. It is also the first scene that's shown in the opening sequence of Jonny Quest. Benton wonders if the natives worship the dragons, and Ashida confirms that the natives now worship him. Ashida suggests a contest between two dragons, where the winner devours the loser, but Benton refuses to watch something so vile and sadistic. Ashida mocks their Western cultures and postpones the match, saying that Benton doesn't have the appetite or caliber for fighting and martial arts. When Race mentions that he understands, Ashida suggests a duel. Although Ashida makes some foul attacks, Race effortlessly defeats him, which perhaps hurts Ashida's ego, and he asks the guests to stay back. That night, Benton decides to leave the place, and they sneak out. However, they are attacked by the dragons and are forced to climb a tree. Ashida and Sumi find them, and Ashida suggests a final battle between Race and Sumi. Ashida is willing to let them go if Race wins, but it's apparent that he has other nefarious plans as he preps Sumi to win. There is not much difference between Ashida and Zin, as both are stereotypical mad scientist villains. Despite what we think, it's one of the fan-favourite episodes, be it the exceptionally demonic drawing of Dr. Ashida, his megalomaniacal nature or evil laughter. He is sure one villain that instilled fear and inspiration. At first, Sumi is able to toss around Race for a bit, but he quickly recovers and takes on Sumi, throwing him across walls like nothing. Race finally defeats Sumi, forcing him to surrender, but Dr. Ashida puts the quests in a dungeon. Bandit finds the dungeon door open as Benton and Race realise it must be a trap. They still sneak out and are followed by Sumi and two dragons. While Benton goes first with the boys and Bandit, Race distracts Sumi and even slides a rock from a hill to kill one of the dragons. The scene is familiar to the ones seen in the Pygmies episode and is a reused footage. For the other one, Race lures it to fall from a cliff, and later, he jumps to the sea and comes up on the ship just like the native. Ashida gets angry at Sumi and scolds him, but Sumi doesn't take it anymore and throws Ashida into the dragon pit, ensuring his death and the end of his atrocities.
Let him
Turu the Terrible. In an Amazonian jungle, a pteranodon emerges from a cave and abducts a native man called Nuago from his canoe. His brother, Aku, shouts Turu in horror, which is the name of the gigantic bird, to the natives. Jonny and Hadji are fishing at a nearby river camp, and Hadji catches a fish that bites Bandit's tail. Bandit runs to the cottage and complains to Benton and Race. Bentone shows Race a new metal ore called trioxide, which can help with the space program, and apparently 2 native brothers have given him the ore. They suddenly hear the boys shouting and run to them as the boys show the adults the canoe with the unconscious Aku. Benton recognizes Aku, and together with Race, they bring him to land. Upon waking up, Aku explains everything and informs them that the Turu lives by the river where they have found the ore. Benton immediately asks to arrange a boat, as no one else should have the ore. However, Benton and Race find it hard to believe that a pteranodon still exists. Although it's an extinct species, Turu cameos in The Man Called Flintstone, and various versions also appear in The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. As the quests take a boat and travel through the jungle river, it soon becomes narrow as it enters a crocodile-infested land. Everyone shoots at the crocodiles to keep them from damaging the boat, while the captain advises the kids to keep their eyes open. At night, the quests camp in the jungle, but they soon hear the sound of the Turu. Turu damages the boat's roof and returns to its cave, where its master, an old and feeble man in a wheelchair, pets him. The man Dean takes Turu back to a cage and goes to his mines, where he has employed all the abducted natives in mining the trioxide. He threatens the natives and won't let them leave until all the ore is his. Turu is a mispronunciation since the real name is Tulu, which is difficult for the natives to pronounce. It is a name given by Dean. The next morning, Benton and Race leave to investigate and notice the cave with their binoculars. They also spot Turu and Dean. Benton and Race hide in the forest as the old man orders the bird to hell the intruders. Later, Jonny and Hadji stay with the captain and Aku in the boat, while Benton and Race wear rocket belts and take a bazooka as they fly up on the hills. Turu spots them, but the men shoot at it. Turu lifts Benton, but Race shoots at it, and it releases Benton. The men return to the boat but go back again at night and finally reach Dean's place. They notice the mines and speak to the natives, as Benton realizes that Dean thought of the ore as silver. When they sneak out, Turu senses them, and Dean sends the bird after Benton and Race. A rather uneven match between Turu and the men ensues, as even a bazooka fails to injure it. In all seriousness, it could have been way easier if the natives had jumped on the old fellow while Turu was in a cage, but then we wouldn't have this story and this chase. However, the boat's roof again becomes collateral damage as the captain screams at the bird. We sure would have liked to know why Turu hated it. Anyway, Race manages to shoot at Turu's head and injure it seriously, and as it falls into a tar pit, Dean follows and also jumps in. Although this may seem grim, the workers get freed, and Benton signals at the boat with his torch to know if the boys are okay. The captain signals back, adding some expletives about the bird. The quests return with Aku and Nuago. Jonny had little to do in this episode, but he brings a good closure with some music. However, he too is surprised as a crocodile bites his stick. The series has several classic Hanna-Barbera tropes of foes appearing as friends, and a lot of unmasking, as well as its shared bit of mad fellows that keeps the adrenaline rising. Our favourite is when Quest's team is chased on the treacherous mountain by a crazy Nazi, and when Race and Benton overthrow Chinese terrorists. If you'd like to know more, stay tuned as we guide you through these dramatic stories. The Fraudulent Volcano. The episode starts with a gorgeous artwork of the sea and a volcano. An old man emerges from a cave and tries to climb down carefully. However, more soldiers in hover platforms emerge from the caves and follow the old man, who now rides a bike to escape. The old man eventually falls off the cliff and into the water. The soldiers go to inspect, but assume he has drowned, and so they leave just as the old man comes up the water. The soldiers return to the cave as the volcano erupts. Somewhere else, Benton Quest tests out his new invention, the firebomb, which works on a remote and can help extinguish the fire, just like blowing on a match. The experiment was successful, and the experiment put out a fire on the electric tower. Jonny and Hadji watch the test with wonder as they cheer on Benton, who almost immediately gets a call from the governor of Bahiti about the eruption of Mont Tahawa. When the Quests arrive at the island, The governor explains that he needs the firebomb's help to prevent the volcanic eruption. As they speak, another man overhears their conversation with the help of a stethoscope. The volcano also wakes up for the 7th time, and sure, it doesn't blow up in the typical way a volcano should erupt, which makes the event more intriguing for Race and Benton. The eavesdropper leaves the building and calls Simon 1 while he addresses himself as Simon 11. Simon 11 informs Simon 1, who reports to Dr. Zinn that the second series of volcanic explosions has been successful. Dr. Zinn is now working on destructive forces, which he intends to sell to countries or anybody who can pay. This is the 4th and the last appearance of the diabolical Dr. Zinn in this series. Upon Dr. Zinn's instruction, Simon 1 drops a live tarantula on quest at night. Jonny throws the spider away with water, and Hadji catches it with another jug. They suddenly smell smoke and notice that the hangar is on fire. It's no rocket science for the group, but they understand that somebody doesn't want the quest to investigate. The following morning, Race and Benton fly their plane a little too close to the mountain when Simon 1 opens a secret door in the pit, letting out a laser-like weapon. The invisible beam from the laser sets fire to the airplane, and the men have to escape in parachutes as they directly enter the volcano from the same door. Jonny also urges Sargent to take them to the mountain to help Quest and Bannon. Inside the volcano, Race and Benton are surrounded by the purple-suited soldiers and Simon 1 as they speak to Dr. Zinn through a video call. This is truly iconic, as throughout the show, none from the Quest team has ever met Dr. Zinn physically in person. Simon 1 receives a call about a vehicle approaching, and he sends the soldiers to take care of it, who knocks out the sergeant. Jonny and Hadji hide and enter the cave, and as sirens open the door, the boys sneak in. They take one of the carts to hide and knock out a soldier, using him as a decoy to get past others. When they notice Benton and Race are being taken in a similar futuristic cart, Jonny deliberately crashes the cart onto the other, allowing Race and Benton to subdue the soldiers. While leaving the volcano base, Race damages the controls and the power source. However, as they try to return with the same car, the soldiers follow them in their hover platforms. But wait, what about the unconscious sergeant? It's kind of selfish to leave him alone up in the mountain. When Race drives through a tunnel, the hover platforms crash onto the wall, and the heroes escape. In the end, the governor thanks the Quests for help in catching the criminals, while the installations inside the volcano get destroyed in a last bout of explosions. The only drawback is that Dr. Zinn remains free and out of the clutches. However, as Benton claims, they will be ready the next time the crazy villain strikes again. Werewolf of the Timberland. The story in this segment is set within the deep woods of Canada, where a gold smuggler, Jacques, gets attacked by what seems to be a loup-garou, which means werewolf. The next day, Jacques watches Dr. Quest and his family arrive in the woods and informs Pierre, the head honcho in the gold smuggling business. Another smuggler, Blackie, also visits Pierre and asks if he is the one who attacked his men at night, to which Pierre gets angry as he doesn't want anyone else to know he is the wolf. However, Pierre denies attacking Jacques. Pierre also has a secret boss who asks him to take care of business, so Pierre and Blackie threaten the Quests, asking them to leave. Benton informs the men that the Ottawa government has sent him to find a grove of petrified forest. The goons comment they are trespassing and warn the Quests about loup-garou, but Benton ignores them as he is on government property. The goons leave but cut a tree so proportionately that it falls directly between the two tents of the boys and the adults. The next morning, Benton and Race take their hovercraft to look for their tree, while Pierre sends his men to follow them. Although the Jonny Quest animated series does delve into various fictional animals and creatures, it is the first adventure and sci-fi cartoon television that does not take place in a fictional world, and each episode is centered on very real places like Quebec in this story. As Bandit gets chased by a skunk, Jonny and Hadji have to run after him so he won't get lost. The kids get lost instead, but an Indian named Whitefeather and his good wolf, Grey One, appear to them. Whitefeather points the boys in the right direction and tells them that the bad guys are near the hill. After Whitefeather disappears, Jonny insists they must spy on the bad men and finds out that loggers are smuggling gold with the help of logs. The boys get noticed and are tied inside a shed, but Whitefeather returns, knocks out Jacques, and cuts loose their rope before disappearing again. The kids hitch a ride on one of the logs and slide through while Blackie and his men start shooting at the boys. Jonny and Hadji finally fall into the river and try to make it to safety, while elsewhere, Pierre gets a call from the big boss, who asks him to dress up as the loup-garou and cause an accident. Pierre is consistently drawn with his right ear enlarged and distorted, a condition known as cauliflower ear, which is common among boxers and fighters. It is a fine detail to add to a character indicating his past. As the boys take a breather, White Feather returns and calls his wolf back, and they head toward where Benton and Race have camped. The adults worry about the kids, and suddenly, Grey One appears, but before they can shoot, Grey One jumps on Pierre, who is dressed as a werewolf. Well, whoever gave Pierre the costume has ripped him off, as it's outrageously hilarious. Grey One chases after Pierre, making him jump off the cliff and fall into the river. Race tries to shoot at Grey One, but Jonny stops him as he and Hadji appear with White Feather. Afterward, Jonny shares the long story with Benton and Race, and Benton mentions that the Mounties will now capture the criminals. However, aren't we forgetting Little Bandit? White Feather sends Grey One to find him, but when Grey One finds him, he won't go near Bandit. The reason is clear, as Bandit returns shamefully with the skunk's odour, and now it's up to Jonny to give him a wash. Pirates from below. It looks like Dr. Benton Quest's underwater research is not yet complete as he works from another prober and notices a seahorse. He has fun describing it to Jonny over the radio and calls it by the scientific name Alpha Branchii. In reality, its scientific name is Hippocampus. A large squid covers up the screen of the prober, and Benton tests the remote control arms to pull it off. As Quest leaves, another submarine follows him, and the divers inside the submarine report the progress to their master. When Benton comes up on land, he informs the others that he needs to meet a scientific delegation from Calcutta, and only Hadji volunteers to go, wishing he could learn something new from them. To tease Jonny, Hadji levitates him. Benton also asks Race to check on the prober's emergency ejector system, as there's something wrong with the hydraulic circuits. Benton and Hadji leave on their hydrofoil, and Benton borrows Hadji's portable communicator to video call Jonny and asks him to do his homework. It turns out even adventures can't protect kids from homework, but that's just the least of Jonny's troubles, as when he and Race check on the prober, the underwater enemies come up and render Race unconscious with a dart. When Race wakes up, he is tied to the seat of the master controls, and the goons threaten to shoot Jonny unless he takes the prober underwater. Sometime later, Benton and Hadji come back and find no sign of the others and the prober, so Benton makes some calls. Hadji calls Jonny with the help of the communicator, and Jonny tells them that he, Race, and Bandit are prisoners. Benton asks Jonny to keep the communicator on and gets his coordinates to track them down. Meanwhile, the sonar signals that the enemy's base is near. As a steel net lifts, Race is forced to enter the premises and comes above water, completing whatever mission the enemies had. The goons take the prisoners on a high-functioning hovercraft and enter a tunnel, but Jonny, Race, and Bandit coordinate to throw off the goons from the hovercraft and hijack it. As they leave the cave, the goons follow them and start to shoot. Another spectacular aspect of this series is that Hanna-Barbera's animated realistic movement ensured detailed background visuals that were appealing to the eyes with only a TV budget, not to mention the jazzy soundtrack that added to the brilliant storytelling. Moving on, Jonny finds a gun in the hovercraft, and Race starts shooting back, but Bandit is once again the liability as he falls off the ledge into the water, and Jonny jumps in to save him. Both get caught by the enemies, and Race also has to surrender. The main villain, a foreign commander, confronts the prisoners and asks them about Dr. Quest. The character's design is mind-bogglingly smart, as his bushy eyebrows and dots for his eyes make him seem intimidating. He finds the communicator device to learn where Hadji and Benton are, and then sends his men to capture them. Once the entire Quest family is captured, the commander congratulates Benton on his invention, and that he will seek ransom for the release of the prober and the quests, or sell it to the highest bidder. As the commander and other goons leave, Hadji uses his ruby to hypnotize the guard who helps them escape. As the quests leave on their prober, they are followed by several fish-like mini-subs. They throw torpedoes at the prober, but its solid armor doesn't waver. Benton uses the prober's remote control arms to destroy them. Somewhere above the water, the commander waits on his boat and sends one of his divers with a mine. As the commander calls Benton and tries to strike a deal, the diver attaches the mine to the prober. The diver returns feeling accomplished, but it's too soon as Race senses it and removes the mine, which floats and attaches to the boat. And when the commander's time is up, it blows up their boat, leading to a karmic death. Ultimately, Dr. Quest hands his prober to the US Navy.
Might as well join the party. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Attack of the Tree People. The episode opens with a picturesque scene of a boat sailing on the sea. The quests are inside the boat called Sea Quest, but suddenly it catches fire from an oil leak. Race and Benton find it impossible to douse the flames with fire extinguishers, so they wear their life jackets and abandon ship. However, by dawn, the boys and Bandit get separated from Race and Benton. While a ship rescues the adults, the boys come up shore on what looks like an uninhabited island. They make a scarecrow with a life jacket and a coconut before venturing into the forest for food. However, some unlikely hosts welcome them. The boys and Bandit get taken away by a group of tree-inhabiting but friendly apes. Speaking of unlikely friends, Jonny was originally named Chip Baloo, and the series had a working title of The Saga of Chip Baloo and Quest File 037. The pilot episode even had Intelligence 1 codename Benton Quest's file as 037. Benton Quest worries about the boys as the rescue ship fails to find them, and Race assures him. The ship's captain continues to send SOS, which is heard by two poachers, Silky and Chopper, who get interested in the reward. Meanwhile, the boys and Bandit hang on a tree where the apes left them. They try to escape by riding a log, but the apes stop them and take them back. After the apes leave, Jonny and Hadji once again try to climb down, but the overly friendly and, let us say, cling apes pull them back. It's not long before the boys and Bandit make friends with these gentlemanly creatures. Coincidentally, Race and Benton also notice the scarecrow before the captain gives up the search. The captain gives them the necessary equipment and informs the Nuum Fati officials to send a boat. Race and Benton follow the boys' footsteps, while the poachers also find the boys chilling with the apes. Silky decides it will be better to kidnap the boys and ask for ransom, and the two sneak upon the boys. However, the friendly apes are handy as they swing and throw away the poachers. The boys receive princely treatment from their ape friends, and we'd be lying if we said we weren't jealous. The party is broken up when the poachers start shooting at the peaceful apes. As the apes flee, the poachers capture Jonny, and while the poachers call for Hadji, Jonny throws off one of the poachers with his judo. But it doesn't work as Hadji surrenders. Chopper stays with the boys as Silky finds Race and Benton. He strikes a deal to release the boys once Benton pays a hefty sum. The situation soon changes when the apes notice everything and takes away the dumber one's gun as it sleeps while guarding the boys. As Chopper gets scared, Jonny and Hadji force him to untie them, but the apes are not so forgiving as they pound on the poacher's back. At the poacher's tent, Silky forces Benton to make some calls to get the money, and while they wait for it, Jonny and Hadji notice them. Unfortunately, their friends have damaged the gun, so Jonny uses ape language to instruct the apes to subdue Silky. As the apes jump on the tent and pound on the poacher, the boys untie Race and Benton. Finally, having caught the notorious poachers, all of them head back, and the apes come to the beach to bid goodbye. The Invisible Monster. The story starts in a lab where Dr. Isaiah Norman experiments with molecular energy. However, the generator overloads and the experiment goes wrong, causing a large explosion. As Dr. Norman gains consciousness, he watches an energy blob that goes invisible and gets away from the lab. It makes deep imprints on the ground and blasts everything on the way. Dr. Norman calls Benton Quest and informs him about the issue, but just as he speaks, the invisible monster comes back and attacks Dr. Norman. While the call gets cut at Palm Key, the monster rampages across the village at Cave Island, where the lab is located. Benton and Race Bannon take the hovercraft and inform Jonny and Hadji about their imminent travel plans. They take a new airplane to fly to the island. The new high-functioning plane has smoother takeoff and vertical landing features, making Bandit and the boys fall asleep during the flight. These little things are why the show was phenomenal and remembered by all. The Quests get shocked after seeing the devastation of Dr. Norman's lab and the high-voltage cyclone fence. As Benton reviews the missing scientist's notes, Jonny notices the scorched footprints leading to the jungle. Even though the premises of this plot are not much, it's fascinating that polling at Classic Jonny Quest, Com ranked this episode as number 1 among fans. As Benton stays back to read Dr. Norman's notes, Race, Jonny and Hadji wear their rocket belts to investigate the situation. They find the ruins of a village and the invisible monster making its way through the woods. The group lands on another village, which is completely empty, and the monster also approaches. While Jonny and Race fly up with the help of their rocket belts, Hadji's belt stops functioning. Race and Jonny save him at the last moment and take him back to the lab. Benton informs that Dr. Norman has been working with energy and mass, which has resulted in creating a mass of energy that is now alive and consuming everything on its path. Benton also guesses that the invisible monster may have consumed Dr. Norman. Benton decides to bomb the invisible monster with paint so that they can trap and destroy it. He instructs the boys to again check their gear before going on the expedition. As the four find the monster, Benton and Race bomb it with paint, which makes it look ghastly and weird. It starts moving back toward the lab to consume more energy to survive the night. The invisible energy monster in this plot is similar to the monster from the id in the 1956 sci-fi movie Forbidden Planet. Jonny and Hadji help Race and Benton set up an electrical trap to destroy the monster, and afterward, Benton shows Race the switches that he should flip to lure the monster to the trap. Benton decides to be the bait and goes to the cave where he has set up the main electrical wires and equipment for the destruction. However, as usual, Bandit runs after Benton as he flies away. Unfortunately, the monster also appears, and Bandit shivers, unable to move. By now, the kids and their guardians should have learned that such dangerous expeditions are no place for pet pups. Jonny refuses to listen to Race and rushes to save Bandit, but he returns to the hut just in time. The traps work as they lure the monster to the cave, and finally, Benton lures it with a flashlight. The electrical setup zaps the energy out of the monster and destroys it for good. The team moves back home after learning more about science's mysterious nature.
You mean something found us?
The Devil's Tower. Dr. Benton Quest's research of air, water and ground is never ending, and this episode begins with Quests working on a gas balloon with a piece of equipment attached to it. Race Bannon releases the balloon, but as it gets higher, it gets caught in an air draft, and the lever with the rope gets stuck. The rope tears off, and even the boys fail to catch it. Although Bandit catches the end of the rope, he gets trapped in a tree and has to let go of the rope. The balloon flies and gets on top of the Devil's Escarpment, a rocky mountain that cannot be climbed. The balloon gets stuck in a broken branch, and a few caveman pokes at the equipment. Benton and Race take an old airplane to the plateau above the mountain to retrieve the balloon and equipment. The boys stay back as Bandit gets messed around by a little ape. Race leaves Benton on the plateau with a gun and leaves to bring the boys. The title of this episode is a reference to a national monument of a volcanic neck located in northeastern Wyoming. It is around 1267 feet high and 112 feet above sea level. When Race returns with the boys and Bandit, they do not find Benton, while the balloon and the equipment are intact. They soon get surrounded by the cavemen, and one of them speaks in what seems like German. The cavemen give the boys and Race a rope to climb through a hole in the ground. There, the boys and Race are reunited with Benton, who discloses that he too was sent there the same way. Another voice speaks to the group from the shadows and threatens them. A decrepit Heinrich von Duffel introduces himself as a German soldier and holds the group at gunpoint. He explains that he got trapped in the Devil's Tower for 19 years, and now he will leave the place with the Quest's airplane and the bag of diamonds he found. Von Duffel calls Naktu, the caveman, and his friends, asking them to guard the Quests as he prepares to leave. While Naktu and his friends sleep, Benton explains that Von Duffel is probably Klaus, a Nazi soldier and war criminal that escaped and is hiding here. Race steals Naktu's club and knocks him out as the group escapes through a narrow slope inside the cave. However, it doesn't take much for the cavemen to awaken and run after the Quests. Naktu and his friends have also appeared in The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, which proves how interesting they were in the series. As the Quests try to make it out of the cavemen roll down a stone, but the Quests jump to save themselves. They walk down the narrow sides of the mountain, but Klaus and the cavemen continue to stone bomb them. Klaus then asks Naktu for help to get grenades and diamonds on the plane. As he flies, Klaus notices Quest, Race, and the boys trying to cross a wooden bridge to get to the adjacent mountain from where they can climb. The crazy Nazi continues to bomb them, and although everyone else successfully crosses the bridge, one of the bombs hits the bridge when Benton is crossing it. Benton hangs by the ropes, and Race pulls him up while the last grenade gets stuck in the airplane, causing it to blow up and kill Klaus. The adventure finally ends with the Quest leaving the plains, but Bandit still has scores to settle with the little ape. However, that won't happen as the mother gorilla scares him away.
How about a little more speed, Race?
Sorry, Doctor. This electric job's built for silence, not speed.
The Kwetong Missile Mystery. Somewhere in a swamp, two men travel by boat when they get noticed by sentries in black uniforms, who report the incident to their leader. As the boat nears a lagoon, the men find a missile being prepped and take pictures. However, the sentries blow up the mines in the water, taking down the boat and its passengers while the missile goes down inside an underwater chamber. Somewhere nearby, Lieutenant Singh of the Kwetong Police meets Dr. Quest on his ship and invites him to meet Singh's superior, Commissioner Wah. The Quests travel to the Kwetong police station, where Commissioner Wah tells them that people living in the Swamp Lake area have become sick after eating Ketong fish. Moreover, none of the investigators have returned, indicating something sinister is going on. Commissioner Wah promises to send all the baggage and a sample fish to the team's hotel rooms. Once at the hotel, Race and the boys enjoy the beauty of China and the Orient. But when a bellboy brings their baggage, they notice an unidentified bag, and Race senses it has got a bomb. As Race snatches the bag and hurls it outside into the air, it blasts, and Race questions the porter, who seems unaware. Bandit also fears the time bomb and refuses to come out from under the furniture. Benton further confirms that the fish contains substantial levels of meslonide, a small proportion of which can cause death. Race also recognizes it as the element found in missile fuels. The adults agree that someone is keen on keeping people from visiting swamp lakes. As the adults leave, the boys and Bandit are left in the hotel room for safety. But are they ever safe with that rebellious attitude? However, this time, trouble comes uninvited. Benton calls the boys through the portable communicator and asks them to record whatever feed he and Race get. But sentries and Lieutenant Singh abducts the boys, and the camera catches them. When Benton and Race try to speak to the boys, they notice that the kids are missing and going back. They check the camera. Race and Benton call Singh and ask him about the boys. As Singh tries to flee, Race and Benton follow him with a helicopter. Lieutenant Singh notices the helicopter and adopts various ways to shake off the tail, but his car eventually falls off the cliff and he is thrown back. The car goes up in flames, but Benton helps call the ambulance on Singh after he discloses some truth. When Commissioner Wah arrives with the ambulance, he comments that dying would be a better option for Lieutenant Singh, since he could be shot for being a traitor to the country. This series' overall concept and story arc about a boy and his adult companions getting into international adventures is close to the animated adaptation of Terry and the Pirates. It is also often considered a time capsule for the US in the mid-1960s, as plots like this one covered areas like Maoist China, USSR spies, and the space race. However, stereotypes and problematic archaic relationships are also a downside of the show. Nevertheless, the show's portrayal of covert operations is no less of a spy movie. Race and Benton enter the swamp and notice the sentries posted on the trees. They get the sentries one by one with the help of tranquilizers and finally enter the main base. Benton gas bombs the AC vents, ensuring everyone within is asleep while he and Race wear a gas mask. The two split up and look for the boys, but Benton eventually finds them sleeping. However, Benton gets held at gunpoint by the main villain, General Fong, who in turn gets poked by Race's gun as Race forces Fong to open his gas mask. As General Fong falls asleep, Race brings the kids and Bandit outside while Benton destroys the missile. When they make their escape, General Fong and the sentries wake up. The sentries shoot at the boats and also blow up the mines as the heroes luckily escape. A furious Fong shoots his own man for failure, who falls on the detonator, causing General Fong's boat to blow up. Commander Wah and his army also arrive. Although they might be a little late to the party, the boys and Bandit are also upset as they slept through most of it.
Stay where you are! Don't move!
The House of Seven Gargoyles. It's time for a Scooby-Doo-ish story arc, as it starts with a man entering an old and spooky-looking Nordic castle. The castle has 7 creepy gargoyles, and one of them wakes up and spies on Professor Gunther Eriksson. Professor Eriksson's servant Gunnar informs him about Dr. Quest's party renting a cruiser, which delights Eriksson as he looks forward to meeting such an accomplished person. After Gunnar leaves, Professor Eriksson attempts to lock up his diary, which has an important formula, but the gargoyle jumps on him and tries to strangle him to death. Gunnar arrives in time, and the gargoyle flees before Gunnar can see anything. At this point, it's clear that the gargoyle is no supernatural being, but a person wearing a hideous costume. He goes through a cemetery and meets up with a man named Ivar. The spy's name is revealed to be Dietrich, who informs Ivar about his failed attempt to get the formula and Dr. Quest's visit. Ivar berates him and sends him back to retrieve the formula. Personally, we feel the animators did their best with Dietrich and Klaus, making the characters look perfectly spooky. Meanwhile, Dr. Quest's party travels through a fjord, which he mentions is the deepest and narrowest in all of Norway. The description indeed matches the Sogn Fjord in Norway. Benton tells the kids about Professor Eriksson's Raklev Castle, which is supposed to be haunted by its first owner, Baron Raklev. As they talk, Bandit attracts the attention of a seal while Jonny notices a periscope that goes underwater. Everyone refuses to believe Jonny, but he is telling the truth as an enemy submarine sails much beneath them and plans to meet Ivar to get Eriksson's formula. While on their way to the castle, Gunnar confirms that a submarine can't be on the fjord. As the Quests reach the castle, they look at the gargoyles, but only Jonny notices one of them shooing away a bird. Again, everyone refuses to believe him, and Hadji teases that he should check his eyes and head. Later, Professor Eriksson shows the group his anti-gravity machine, Ericon, when Bandit notices Dietrich and barks at him, but Dietrich gets away. The news about the attack on Professor Eriksson alerts them, and Race offers to sleep in the professor's room. At night, Dietrich gets past a sleeping Bandit, but Bandit still smells and follows him. Dietrich tries to steal the lab's keys from Professor Eriksson's bedside table, but Race catches them. Dietrich is able to get away from Race, but the keys fall in front of Bandit, who takes it away and lures Dietrich. Race also recovers and shoots, but to no avail, and Bandit loses the key accidentally, which is taken by Dietrich, who now moves into the lab. You might be surprised that The Real Adventures of Jonny Quest Season 2. Writer Lance Falk has been a fan of this original series and brought back Eriksson to the episode General Winter. The anti-gravity technology was also used for Jonny's hoverboard in that series. In this story, Dietrich fails to steal the formula, but he gets the Erikon bar and takes it to Ivar, who refuses to pay him and sends him back to spy. Later, Ivar goes back to the castle and shoots Dietrich as revenge. As he falls from the roof, Jonny is proven right. Like Scooby-Dooby-Doo, there's an unmasking of the dead gargoyle. However, Professor Eriksson is still worried about his Erikon bar, and Gunnar points out that he saw a car leaving. Professor Eriksson reveals that Dietrich is Norway's star acrobat dwarf and realizes Ivar is the main culprit. Race and Benton take Professor Eriksson's helicopter to chase Ivar, who takes the same cruiser Quest rented earlier. Race and Benton also notice the submarine, now out and waiting for Ivar. As Jonny predicted, this news will surely mean Hadji chewing on his words. The foolish and desperate divers on the submarine shoot at the helicopter, which brings down the glacier on both the submarine and the cruiser, killing all the villains. Have you noticed how every villain in the show dies at their own hands, carefully saving our heroes from murder? Although the Erikon is lost forever, Professor Eriksson is ready to remake it, but the souvenir for the kids might be too much as he gifts them with the real gargoyle. Terror Island, the latest adventure, takes Jonny Quest and his company back to Asia, and it begins on Moitu Island, where a giant crab escapes from a Chinese lab. Soldiers and guards shoot at it, but the bullets do not hurt the giant red crab, which goes into the sea. In Hong Kong, Race and Benton are riding a pedicab when they notice Jonny has replaced a pedicab driver and is speeding on with the driver and Hadji as passengers. Jonny ignores his father's remarks and loses control of the vehicle as they fall straight into the sea. Jonny and Hadji catch a cold while returning and are confined to their quarters, but are later taken to see the celebration of the Chinese New Year. But when the group goes for dinner, a woman wants to take their pictures, but before giving back the developed picture, she shows the image of Benton Quest to some thugs. It's not a surprise when Benton gets abducted in the middle of the night, which wakes up Bandit, and he wakes up others. Race finds a threat note for not telling the police and leaves on the hydrofoil. He meets up with Jade, who is coincidentally also in Hong Kong. As Race becomes desperate to find Benton, Jade promises to help her friend. She inquires about Benton across the town and finally finds a man with information. She bribes and threatens him to learn that Chu Xingling is holding Benton on Moitu Island. This is the second and last time that Jade appears in this series. She again appears in the 80s and 90s versions of Jonny Quest, and in the telefilm, she was extremely modified to be a Caucasian with long red hair, Race's ex-wife and mother of his daughter. But enough of that, as Benton is stuck in another peril. Chu Xingling is a mad scientist who shows Benton how he used certain bacteria to create giant versions of a spider and a lizard. No wonder the giant crab exited from here. Benton exclaims that the radioactive bacteria is as destructive as an atomic bomb, and it may have contaminated the sea, making other monsters. Chu remarks that he needs solutions to this problem, but Benton refuses to participate in his outrageous experiments. Didn't Ashida have the same idea of making monsters out of animals? Are all Asian scientists in the series crazy zoologists? Race goes back to look for Jade, and her attendant, Callum, reveals she went to Moitu Island to get Benton back. Race heads back and tells the kids he is going to the island but asks them to stay back. Back at Moitu, Chu has tied up Benton and gives him 3 hours to decide, after which the gates to the monster's cage will automatically open up. Race arrives at the island in the hydrofoil and seems aware that the kids and Bandit have sneaked in. Of course, we are not surprised either. The show's name is Jonny Quest, after all. Curiously enough, Cartoon Network once held a favourite cartoon mum contest in 1993, where Race Bannon won, leaving behind Hanna-Barbera's other mums like Wilma Flintstone and Jane Jetson. Race tells the boys to stay in the boat, and he goes with a gun to investigate. Race is in for a shock as he witnesses a giant red crab fighting a giant spider. Their horrible sound attracts Bandit, who runs to look for Race, and the boys must follow. They find the Bandit hiding behind a bulldozer. Meanwhile, Race has been noticed by some of the guards and is in the middle of a shootout. The kids watch Race being chased, and Jonny drives the bulldozer to give Race a hand. They break a fence, allowing Race to enter the lab and save Benton just in time, but another guard points his gun at Race. Are we having a deja vu? Because Jade appears out of nowhere and knocks out the guard while Chu breaks a window and escapes. The cage gates also open simultaneously, but Jonny and Hadji bulldoze into the room, killing the giant spider, while the giant lizard dies due to the ceiling falling upon it. The group escapes the place on a speedboat, but Chu and his minions follow. The villains don't make it far as another gigantic lizard emerges from the water and chases them. It gets electrocuted by wires and takes down Chu as well. Finally, as the heroes head back, Race kisses Jade for saving them, which disgusts the little boys.
You're out! Uh-oh!
Monster in the Monastery. The story starts somewhere in the Himalayas, where a Yeti scream terrifies the villagers and worries the head priest, Raj Guru, of the Buddhist temple. Raj Guru shares his concern with another monk, Ming Ho, and mentions that if the Yeti is back in the old palace, it may disconnect the village from the outside world. Benton Quest and his party travel to meet his friend Raj Guru in Nepal, who is the high priest of Kung Jung. Apparently, even Hadji is aware of the man. Dr. Quest shows them the palace called Kali Yuga, where no one has lived for 100 years. That's debatable as of now. When the party arrives, Raj Guru tells them about the Yeti problem, and sure enough, a Yeti lets out a scream and throws an innocent villager from a cliff. Benton and Race seek to put a stop to the issue, but Raj Guru is terrified and feels offering prayers and sacrifice during the Mane Rambu festival that night will solve the issue. At night, Race and Benton debate the existence of Yetis when one starts to catapult rocks into the cottage and the village. Even if we agree on the existence of these enigmatic creatures, it's doubtful they will be smart enough to catapult rocks. Although the exquisite artwork in this series has been truly one of a kind, it has also meant high production costs, which is why the series was discontinued after just one long season. Despite that, it became profitable for Hanna-Barbera syndication. Now, back to our plot. The sound wakes Jonny and Hadji, and they prepare to go out with the adults to see the matter. But Bandit notices a Yeti stalking the cottage and runs after it, forcing the boys to follow him. The Yeti tries to crush Bandit with a rock, but the rock breaks, so the boys and Bandit follow the Yeti to the castle. Later at night, Benton watches the festivities with Raj Guru, while Race looks for the boys, who have finally found Bandit in the palace's last room. Jonny, Hadji, and Bandit notice a Yeti walking with a lamp. Soon, he opens the mask to reveal himself. Other costumed Yetis join him and ask about the plan to set fire to the village. Bandit sneezes and draws the imposter's attention, who starts shooting. The kids run to escape and hide in a haystack, while the Yeti imposters throw fireballs at the village. Race comes back with no news of the boys, and at first, Raj Guru thinks it's the llamas, but soon realizes that the fire is set by those who want to destroy him so that they can carry out their illegal and criminal activities. Back at the palace, Jonny, Hadji, and Bandit play tricks on the imposters with the palace antiques to evade being killed or caught. However, Jonny gets separated from Hadji and Bandit as they take down a few imposters. Hadji also takes a Yeti mask as evidence to show the others. The adults also take a jeep to find the boys and head towards the abandoned palace, but a Yeti imposter causes trouble. However, it gets knocked out by their rock, and the adults gain safe access. Animators of this episode often couldn't follow Doug Wildey's style, so some had to be borrowed from sister productions to meet the deadlines. As a result, some of the Yetis may look scary to you, while others may seem to be from Yogi Bear Nation. Meanwhile, the boys try to escape together. They finally hide behind a gong, and then Jonny has an idea as he cuts the rope of the gong and uses it as a slide to go down. While one of the Yeti imposters shoots at them, a real Yeti appears and takes him down. The boys come short in front of the jeep and head inside together to find the others. Hadji also shows the evidence and tells the group about the real Yeti. However, the gang is surprised that all the imposters have been taken down. As Raj Guru realizes the truth, the Americans also watch the real Yeti climb high on the mountains, having served justice.
Hit the floodlight, Doctor, and grab a torch.
The Sea Haunt. We have now reached the end of the series and are faced with a sea monster attacking a freight ship in the Java Sea. The quest team flies over the same area when they receive a radio transmission of the Star of Borneo ship being lost. As chance would have it, the quest team spots it, and Race makes a vertical landing on the empty ship. The group notices signs of devastation all across the ship, and Benton finds the captain's logbook in his cabin. He reads it out loud and learns that the ship stopped due to an engine problem when they were attacked by the gruesome sea creature that's impervious to bullets and killed most of the crew, while the others left with a lifeboat. As the writing ends abruptly, the group assumes that the captain might also have been killed. One more thing, the ship is carrying some top-secret precious cargo, which has been the main concern of the captain. All this while, the creature has been stomping across the ship and has also damaged the quest airplane. As they speak, Bandit notices the creature snooping on them and barks at it, but the creature hides away. While looking for food to pass the night, the group comes across a freezer and finds Charlie, the cook, inside. He calls the creature a dragon because of its look and informs that the creature is afraid of the light. Charlie also informs that the precious cargo is in long boxes, which look like a coffin, but he doesn't know what it is. The creature attacks again, but Benton fends it off with some fire. They have dinner with boiled rice and fortune cookies, after which Race searches for something useful and finds the creature in the paint room. He shoots at it for no apparent reason, but to make it madder, and shuts it inside. The quests assimilate torches and flashlights to finally get rid of the monster. The monster breaks out of the room and comes to the deck. It breaks one of the flashlights, while Race and Benton try to keep it at bay with the flaming torches. Bandit gets scared by the chaos and jumps through a hole to enter the ship's basement. The boys go to look for him and find him hiding in a coffin full of gold bricks. However, a sleeping vampire would have been interesting. This episode takes inspiration from the horrors created by H.P. Lovecraft, and the monster is similar to the creature from the Black Lagoon. However, unlike what Benton described, the creature doesn't resemble a combination of a manticore and hippocampus. On the other hand, a fire to the ship makes Charlie jump into the sea to save himself, but he gets surrounded by sharks. Race helps scare away the sharks, and Charlie climbs back, thanking his ancestors when he should have thanked Race instead. Benton and Race manage to make the creature back off, but it climbs on the mast and screams. Finally, Charlie breaks the mast with the ship's harpoon cannon, and the creature jumps into the water while Hadji takes a picture of the monster just before it jumps. The kids watch everything and come up when the monster is gone. They show the gold brick to the adults and Hadji the picture, which turns out to be an image of his thumb. Although no one will believe the quest team, the end is good as a Dutch search plane finds them, and they are rescued while the creature returns to the depths of the sea. Marvelous verdict. Jonny Quest is one of those rarest animated jewels that has been way ahead of its time. It has been the pioneer of adventure and thriller that we know of now. Its exquisite layouts and artwork are realistic and gorgeous, transporting back to us in time and how. What are your thoughts on the entire series? And what's your favourite episode in this one? Do let us know in the comments section.